You have chosen Autogefuehl for a full review of the all-new generation of the BMW X3, and we will reward you with a full review here on the exterior, interior and the driving experience. And since we've already driven the X1 and the X4, so the two siblings, one closer, one a little bit farther away, we'll also tell you more about the difference on those vehicles. As always, join us in full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go. The new X3 is characterized by a very big front kidney. In the middle part, by the way, there's this front camera system, very interesting to look at it later. And also the BMW double kidney has this active system that it opens or shuts on the inside depending on the cooling air needed for the engine. Those headlamps have a very interesting characteristical LED daytime running light structure. They come standard with LED. Optionally, you can also get the adaptive LED system. This is the so-called X line, so has this crossover look, and also with the gray or silver accentuations already in the lower bumper. We'll also see some more later on. And this one here is also the so-called Terra brown color. It's really hard to see as it's pretty dark. It's an interesting color. And from some shades you can also mistake it for a wine, dark wine red. But then when you come closer, you see it's a brown color. 4.70 meters or 15'4" is the total length of this vehicle. Here the all-new X3. 4.70 meters it is, by the way, Chris. Chris recently told us that he's always missing the meters figure when I'm running in there from the side of the picture. So here the X3 and the X4 is the same length. Just the X4 is dropping down here in this coupe style form. You can also check out the full review of the X4 later on after we finish with this one. Also, if you compare it to the X1, this one here is 27 centimeters longer. Why is that? Well, mainly because there's a longer front hood. Here you have the longitudinal engine mount, where you can also fit the 6-cylinder engines. The X1 with a front wheel driven platform, you have the transverse building platform for the engines in the very front. The rim size start from 18-inch, go up to 21-inch. Those ones here are 19-inch. I think it's a good compromise, a good choice. Maybe you think they look a little bit small here. The reason is we already have winter tires mounted here. In this case then the rims already appear a little bit smaller. This side breather here, air breather at the BMW, sometimes it's open and reduces the wind turbulences inside the wheel arches, but here just a design element, it's closed from the back part. The X-Line again features the silver contrast as the side skirt in the lower part right there, and overall the rest of the design is rather conservative, upright windows, but this is supposed to bring you a lot of room on the interior. We'll see later on if this is really true. And the very cool feature you can see, for example, in your garage are those wings or wing stripes that are projected. In the rear, the new generation has become more beautiful, I think, because those tail lamps are more horizontally drawn and have this new daytime running light signature. I think that's a good design job. But overall, you see exterior and also some of the interior, I can already tell you, they rather have a conservative setup here with the X3. But that also doesn't annoy the so far customers because it's not so much different than the previous generation. They have real exhaust pipes on the exterior. You have to mention that nowadays. So nice with chrome there, both pipes. And the silver X-Line contrast here again. Overall, I think it is basically, yes, a conservative layout, but it just fits. This is a mid-sized SUV and still has this real SUV look. Wow, this has been properly cleaned. I love to take a look at those very cleaned up engine covers. Twin power turbo. So today we have the 30i, that's a 2-liter 4-cylinder with 252 horsepower, 6.3 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. This engine is also available at the 20i with the 184 horsepower spec. And then there's the M40i, the 3-liter 6-cylinder R6, 360 horsepower in 4.8 seconds to 100 kilometers an hour. And with that one you can also boost the price easily from this 40,000 base price to, well, 70,000 or something. And then there are other diesels, 20D, 2 liter, 190 horsepower, 25D, 213 horsepower. Then the 30D, that's the 3 liter 6-cylinder with 265 horsepower, or then with 326 horsepower as the M40D. Let's take a look at the interior together. Brushed aluminum decor style, that's sporty and classy at the same time. Leatherette cover, soft touch at the top part of the inside doors. Galvanized window levers, so they really stepped up the game in the interior quality here with the new generation. Still room for bigger bottles at the inside of the doors. Then this one is the X-line, also with this entry cap there in the lower part. Then this is the new interior. There's a steering wheel that has also updated buttons left and right with better quality. The leatherette cover at the top of the dashboard. Then this mix of some analog parts but overall digital instruments. Those analog parts are basically those half circles around. Then the seats. You can see they have a lot of different forms and structures on the seats. If you want to avoid the full animal skin package we have in this test vehicle, in Germany, most European markets, you can also get base fabric seats or also a fabric animal skin mix. And in the US you get the Sensatec, that's a good leatherette in black or in beige color. Now let's get inside, and it's such an easy entry. It feels already like a well grown up SUV, so you don't have to go a segment higher to have this feeling. You already get that here with a mid-size SUV in the X3. Comfortable upright seating position. If you compare it to the X4, you have more room, especially as for the A-pillar, because the X4 is flatter. This one here way more spacious, really feels good, and you feel immediately at home. If you compare to the X1, you sit higher in the X3, that's the difference. And also the front hood is more voluminous, so a little bit limited view here to the front lower part, but it's still quite okay to see. Since all the windows are standing upright, you also have a good round view all around you. That's quite good. So then control of the steering wheel, quite a smooth technique, and the electric support of the seat. Start, of course, without all those extras, have to pay a lot extra. That's always with the premium manufacturers. Then you can also manually lengthen the seating lower area. I think overall you can easily find a good seating position here. I'm 1.86 m or 6'1". I still got a lot of questions. Thomas, how tall are you? Well, just a notification again, we say that in every interior part of every single review since 5 years. So, and now, that's why I always say, watch also in full length, please. Thank you. Now, so I still have a lot of headroom here left, so you could also easily go for the panoramic roof, which is an option, not built in here today, but even if you have that one, you will still fit in the front as a tall person. So let's wake up this interior. Leatherette, soft touch at the top part here of the dashboard. Really nicely done. This is the maximum screen that's available, 10.25 inch. Zoom to the screen and to the instruments, more details. The steering wheel, this is the normal one I would go for, because the M Sport steering wheel somehow is asynchronous, and I'm not sure. I rather like it synchronous here with the steering wheel. What about you? Also with the heated steering wheel function, really cool to have that one in winter times. You could pick up the phone here or use the voice command on the right side, left side for example for assistance systems and cruise control. You still have a separate climate unit. Let's turn on the engine and you can see more of that. It's good that you can easily control that while driving still, and You also have a CD changer and some hotkeys there you can also program. Volume knob still right there. So again, also a conservative layout here. Yeah, do we also have? Yeah, this gesture control, if you like to use it and if have that option. And this brushed aluminum style here is also pretty fancy. X3 logo in the lower part, you can fold open this lower part. Then there's also an inductive charging platform for your smartphone. When the blue light is flashing, it is active. Oh, there's a sharp edge right there. You should pay attention to that. Yourself as a customer, but also BMW maybe for further updates. USB supply in the front, adaptive cup holders, and then this automatic gear shifting lever. You just turn it back to drive or in the front for the reverse gear. Next to the driving modes, I will explain those when we drive the car, and we also have the camera system button. It's good to have it on the separate button. And here we have the head-up display. You can also see that better in the dark with the speed, allowed speed. And if you have a GPS route set, a destination, you'll also get some GPS commands. And one more close-up for you here as for the AC unit, also with the seat heating. So again, as I said, easy to control and also good to have a 2-zone AC when you're not really agreeing on one single temperature. And here we go with the camera system. This is the front view when you put it to D mode again. And this is the reverse view. So you can see the car that is behind you. And also then on the left side, the drone view from above. And also when I turn the steering wheel, you see that the camera switches basically the view. It looks a little bit to the right or to the left. This is really cool and helps you to ease this car around. And the infotainment system up close, you can see you also have a touchscreen function, but you can still control it with the central turning knob in the lower middle console. Really nice that this GPS works pretty well as for the visual parts and also for the for the functioning. Here also you can check the consumption of the vehicle, for example, or see technology in action. If you, for example, have the sport displays, those are pretty interesting when you can turn up the power here, for example. Also, we will turn them on while we drive the vehicle. You also have those xDrive status that you can see, for example, the inclination and also compass info. So pretty interesting things they are offering here. The smartphone connection, by the way, either possible with Bluetooth or with Apple CarPlay. Here we go. Then wireless, BMW is offering that exclusively, but no Android Auto. BMW and Porsche refuse Android Auto because they say they do not handle the data in a care way as Apple does. BMW and Porsche says. And most of you should be familiar with this turning and pressing knob. You can also write, for example, here in the top part if you are searching an address, and then also the hotkeys to each segment. And what about the voice command? Set temperature to 22 degrees.
To adjust the temperature, use the controls on the air conditioning system.
Okay, so the X3 does not have that function yet. Drive me to Berlin.
Berlin. Say yes, or select another entry from the list.
So that is working. And the middle console, also good quality. This middle armrest properly attached. And some room right there with another USB supply. Some BMW fans actually miss the wing lights, especially the wing rear lights at the exterior, but on the interior they are still present and are also among my favorite features already when they're off, when they're on like this. And here we go with the rear compartment. Interesting details here, by the way. Also soft touch leatherette cover at the inside of the doors, top part here, then this stamped X logo. So really cool that I also paid attention to details here. Well, I do exactly fit in here with my knees, but it's really close. However, well, the X5 doesn't offer so much more legroom. So legroom, not the BMW specialty, not in most vehicles. And if you now compare it again to the X1, by the way, the X1 does not have less legroom. So the package of the X1 is definitely better. It's, you know, really a lot shorter on the exterior, but it's not shorter by no means on the interior. Headroom, still plenty left, so this is no problem. There's a hanger, by the way, for the jackets right there. You also still have those door handles. And interesting, with the lower button here, you can also change the angle of the rear bench. That's cool if you rather want to sleep, or maybe, you know, want to be more active in driving, sitting more upright. That's cool to have this option. And you can also flip the seats already from here, this bench, but this will be also possible from the trunk area. Isofix on the outside parts of the seats each, and then you'll also have an armrest with cup holders. They're also adaptive somewhat, keep the stuff tight, important for the kids. And you also have a ski hatch just for loading things through. In some of my recent videos I made some Lost reference, you know, with don't open the hatch. I think no one really got it yet. Usually I get those comments when I do some references. Still waiting for it. Maybe this time, if anyone gets the reference. And we also have this middle console. If you want, you also have a climate unit for the rear seats, as well as a 12-volt power supply. You know, there's this big key again, this computer style key, where you can also see if the, you know, what range you have, or if the car is already locked or something, or can set a preconditioning if you have the independent heating option. But you can also go just for a normal small key. Here you close the vehicle, there you open it, and you can also open the rear hatch with the left button right there. Also you can just open it right there, or then also with this foot kicking mechanism. I just kicked it with the foot in the lower end now, and there we go. And the capacity is 550 up to 1,600 liters if we flip the seats very soon. Here a cabin trolley to show you the dimensions, and you see they're very square, easier to access than in the X4, of course higher than, especially, really good. If you compare it to the capacity of the X1, by the way, just 50 liters more here, so there's not a big difference in the rear area either, but you can see those are great dimensions, very easy to fit things in there. I really like it. Also, you can put bicycles in there. Hydraulic strut. Awesome to have those features. Some more space below that option. You can also fit a replacement tire. This upper cover here does not have a direct rail, but since they have a rather smooth mechanism to actually suck it in, like this, you can see when it's not that fast and it flips back. It's quite well to control and not that wobbly than some of the other mechanisms. So think this is still quite okay. However, I still like it better when they have real rails there. Then if we flip the seats right here and here, there we go, we have it all flat. Good loading possibility. The electric seats cannot be flipped completely to the front. I think you'll be just fine with this setup. Welcome to Thomas's driving lounge with the BMW X3 in this new generation. Here with the 30i, 252 horsepower, the 4-cylinder petrol engine with the turbo. So we're starting here with a little motorway ride, and one of the most important key factors of this new generation is the sound insulation has been improved significantly. At the moment 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour on the clock and it's really very silent and relaxing, super relaxing. And also if we take a comparison to the BMW X4, which is basically the same vehicle, but here you have more room here on the A-pillar. As I said earlier, you feel more like in a travel mobile, you know, like in comparison. The X4 really has this sportier approach. Also, we drove the sportier suspension there. It has a stiffer setup with the standard setup. This one here, a more comfortable suspension. I really like that. Still, it remains a rather sporty BMW SUV feeling, so you don't have a very soft carpet ride. You still see here when the lane change have a sporty approach, even if you're just in the normal comfort mode. So Also in the standard setup here with winter tires, 19-inch rims, it remains sporty. But you can clearly see that the X4 steps up the sportiness. And if you would ask me, you know, if you have a special design favorite in the X4, okay, but just from driving every day, this is offering enough sportiness basically, and it just gives you some more comfort than the X4. So if comfort is really something that is very important to you, then the X3 will do better than the X4. But from the basic setup, of course, from the size and so on, they feel pretty much equal. You know, some city traffic, and now we're going a little bit slower, 50 kilometers. This is so silent in here. Really interesting. So I've been driving the all-new X4 in the States, where we had a rougher tarmac. And here now on, you know, let's say my standard German tarmac, which I also test with a lot of different vehicles, I can even better relate to it, how silent the vehicle really is. And recently we had the Mercedes C-Class, which is in the state. Whoa, that's an interesting Halloween figure. That ghost, that looks creepy. So with the Mercedes C-Class, with the Estate, I mean, yeah, this is an SUV, but price-wise, they come quite close. And interesting is that this one here is indeed way more silent. Pretty interesting. Also how the whole car feels. They have really worked on that interior. Told you that earlier, so really cool that they stepped up the game there as for the quality of the interior too. So a very relaxing, rolling, definitely in city traffic. We also have a couple of assistance systems you can easily activate or deactivate at the steering wheel. So for example, the ACC. Let's get on to the right. There's a good overview in this vehicle, by the way. Now the ACC set. Distance with the car in front of me. And when the next car is coming from the left, you can also see the blind spot monitor with this yellow triangle. Pretty helpful. And it also has this active steering assist. It's also activated at the moment. You're supposed to keep your hands on the steering wheel, of course, all the time. And when the steering, you can also see in the head-up display, is turning green, then it's also actively steering with you. And soon we get to a rather faster part again. We can show you some acceleration with this very engine. If you're driving it very slowly, by the way, you can score some very good consumption figures. So just using now the steering has turned green. Now it would theoretically be steering automatically. You're not supposed to take your hands off the steering wheel, but you can see the and that's exactly the reason. Now it turned yellow again. So there are some transitions when it's going off and on. And so you always have to be aware of that and should not fully trust that those are not fully autonomous systems yet. So if you just keep it really low key, you can score figures as low as 6 liters on 1 kilometers. But when you hammer it rather on the motorway, for example, you can go up into 8-9 liters, to 26 to 30 mpg, which is still quite decent. Since also with the 6-cylinder AJ tested earlier, it was rather like in the 11 liters on 1 kilometers or close to 20 mpg only. So those BMW engines, especially the smaller ones or the big diesels, not the V8 ones we've seen recently with the 8 series. So the smaller petrols and small and big diesel. But I really have to say, it's rather the small petrol and the big diesels that score very low consumption figures with BMW. Very interesting finding for sure throughout all the different tests. So now again, cruise control. I'm not keeping any distance. I can also change the distance here at the steering wheel, and those buttons here are really very well processed. That gives you also a good feeling of controlling the car while driving. And thinking about 3-4 years back, I wouldn't have imagined that I really praised the BMW for the interior quality. They still have a very conservative layout for sure. You also realize it when driving. But then it's not something super new, so you are basically getting used to it easily. And again, I'm really surprised how calm and confident the ride is. You also have this upright seating position, as you would know and expect from an SUV. It's also a couple of centimeters higher than the BMW X1, the smaller sibling. That's one of the key elements when driving the car. And also the front is longer. The reason, said earlier, longitudinal engine mount here in the X3, transverse in the X1. Now, let's go to the sport mode. In the sport mode, the gears are turned up higher, RPMs go higher. Now the car is automatically going a gear lower. And now let's do 70 kilometers to 100 kilometers. And pop. And that was already 100. So you can see with the 4-cylinder here, 252 horsepower, way more than enough power. Now, shifting back times, that took a second, but you can also use the shifting pedals. M8, so ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox, one of the best automatic gearboxes there is on the market. Then you can also shift back here, M4. You can also see I got the sport displays activated here in kilowatt power and Newton meters of torque. Pretty interesting for the co-driver maybe to look at. And then there's also on the other side the Eco Pro mode, which is then charging the normal small car battery. So those mild hybrid systems, which are pretty much popping up everywhere at the moment, BMW already had them for a really long time. So just charging a normal car battery, and this is then taking care, of course, of the lights and car internal electric systems, and therefore not burning much fuel because there would be a resistance the battery needs for the energy production, just taking that from recuperation. In the Eco Pro mode, the throttle input is being reduced a little bit, so you don't accelerate that hard. That saves you a little bit more fuel. And the normal comfort mode would be something, just a standard one in between. So I rather stick to that usually. Well, they could also deactivate the traction control, but doesn't make much sense here on the road at the moment. And of course, this X-Drive, the all-wheel drive system, always comes with the X3. This is also this classic rear-wheel drive platform, basically. So you have a rear-wheel bias with the all-wheel drive system. Also difference to the X1, which is predominantly front-wheel driven, front plus rear. Here's rear plus front from the all-wheel drive concept. Now we're getting into a roundabout. Let's see about that. Agility. So here again, the steering wheel, luggage in the trunk is flying all over the place. So it gives me a good feeling, but it's not that I would say, it's not an SUV where I can say it's super much fun to drive it fast and sporty. And there is also an advantage then for the X1. The X1 is shorter, about 25 centimeters, and it's more fun to drive, it's more agile to drive. It was a little bit stiff with the M Sport suspension though, but without it, it's a good compromise. You can still drive this car not only slowly, of course, yes, but with a little bit longer wheelbase, you rather feel that this car is set up for a more confident, calm ride on the motorway going through. This is the advantage of the X3 for sure. However, here the steering commands are quite well done. The steering also feels quite natural. Now the brakes are also applied very well. And I think they overall transport a very natural feeling of how you can control steering, brakes and throttle. So really a lot of things to be satisfied with, especially also with driving it. Again, suspension is not super soft, but also not too stiff that it would become uncomfortable. However, now when you've just driven those rather narrow corners, you feel also with the longer wheelbase, it's not a sporty, agile mid-size SUV in this base version here. Acceleration-wise, yes, but in the corners there are for sure some sporty steps For example, if you go a version above that with the 40i, but then again, if you think about, you also lose comfort in your everyday driving. So if you take that as an everyday commuter, I would rather stay with this setup here, with a normal petrol engine, with a normal suspension setup. You'll have more fun and more comfort than for that. So now to the countryside riding. I'll set again the cruise control. The head-up display is really well done, one of the best on the markets, I think, because it's very clear to read. It is multi-color, so you have good contrast. You have directly in your line of sight. It's pretty cool, and you never look down then to the normal instruments. So one of the very good options for sure. The AEB, Autonomous Emergency Brake, is standard equipment with this car, luckily, and it's also how it's supposed to be. And I would really go for the blind spot monitor as an option, for the adaptive cruise control, and for the head-up display. Those would be, the most important options, because I always say, you can save some money with some super fancy options, which are maybe just for visuals or seating, for example. You have lots of comfort, even more if you don't pick the animal skin equipment. But then if it's about the assistance systems and some stuff that really adds to your safety, I think you shouldn't save money on that, because when there's more safety, at the end of the day, it will pay off for you, or maybe also for someone else. So here again, a very relaxed drive. And if you ask me, X4 or X3, yes, the X4 was pretty great to drive also on the racetrack, although you feel it's still pushing to the outside with that weight. But the X3 definitely makes more sense, because you have more comfort and also with a more practical rear hatch there. And if you ask me, X1 or X3, well, considering the X1 is really a less expensive vehicle, it somehow makes more sense as well. You have the same room on the interior. The front hood is longer here just with the X3. If you're really keen on driving a 6-cylinder, then it's the X3 for you. And if the little bit even more higher seating position is important for you, then it's also the X3. Because you just sit a little bit higher, have more king-size position here. Already feels like a very grown-up SUV, which it is. But then again, the X1, if you just put the seat maybe a little bit higher, it feels more agile, is more fun to drive, is less expensive, and you have the same room on the interior. So yes, at some point you think, with some features, this is maybe a segment here still above. But if you look at the hard facts, it will still always be the X1. However, there will still be a lot of user cases where the X3 still makes sense. And sometimes if you get some concise offers from your dealers, especially in Germany, not sure how it's on other markets, sometimes we pay less money for the bigger cars, because there are then some special deals also with economies of scales. They want to, let's say, sell more Audi A4 or something, and then suddenly you end up getting an Audi A4 for a lower price than an Audi A1. So this has also to do with some big leasing offers and so on. So you also have to take that in mind into consideration. But overall, the global market clearly is deciding on the X1 at the moment, because the X1 is now the most sold SUV at BMW, and I think there were even now quarters or months where the X1 were the most sold BMW overall. So the X1 is the success car at the moment at BMW. It's no wonder, because it's actually also the best deal they're offering there. However, some more confidence, some more upper riding position, and the 6-cylinder possibility, and the calmness of the ride, the sound insulation is better than here in the X3 than in the X1. Those factors still speak for an X3 if you're willing to pay some of the extra price. And again, as I started this driving part, the best thing is really that this is now one of the most silent and calm mid-size SUV overall on the market, and it's pretty fancy. And now to our conclusion for today with the BMW X3. Well, on the exterior, it It's already almost an X5 as for the exterior dimensions. Visually, of course, it's still shorter. And if you think about the X1 and the X4, X3 and the X4 are basically the same cars, just with a sportier setup for the X4 and of course this coupe style line. This one here makes more sense and it has more room on the inside, especially in the very rear, and is also softer in the ride. The X1 is a little bit more agile, has a better package, so a lot of room on the inside without being so tall on the exterior as this one here already. However, the X3 is more confident in the ride, has a little bit more comfort, and also the higher seating position. And you also have the 6-cylinder capacity if you want so. Overall, it's one of, for sure, the best mid-size SUVs on the market, especially because they have increased the noise insulation here in this very new generation. What do you think? Tell us your comments right there and also join us with our next episode.